we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone again for joining us this afternoon. My name is Vivian Perez Chandler, and I'm the Executive Director of the Asset Building Coalition of Forsyth County. Our mission is to build, rebuild, and protect the assets of residents of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. And our vision is a community where all people have access and opportunity for financial stability. We are very excited to be hosting this event along with the Winston-Salem Foundation. And as today we will be talking about community advocacy and specifically about debt-based driver's license suspensions. So just so you know, the Asset Building Coalition is, as a coalition, these are some of our coalition members. Anyone is able to join our coalition. We are composed of nonprofits, for-profits, individuals in the community, and as you can see, all of these individuals make part of our coalition. Some of the ways that we do our work is by uniting all of these individuals, organizations, community members in Forsyth County to raise awareness about asset poverty, the effects it has on individuals, our community as a whole, and to coordinate strategies that we can all work on together to build asset wealth for a more resilient community. So if this is all new to you, one thing, asset poverty is when an individual or a family don't have 3 months worth of savings if their income were to be interrupted. We know that as of 2018, about 20
Vivian, you've gone on to mute for a little bit. We heard as of 2019.
Can you all hear me now? Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. So I'm not exactly sure what was the last thing you all heard me say, but as a coalition, we unite to talk about asset poverty and see how we can all work together to coordinate strategies that we can all work on to build asset wealth in our community. Some of those things, as you see on the screen, is we work around advocacy, the benefits cliff, coalition building, financial capabilities, and the Forsyth living wage. And one of our main things is mitigating the benefits cliff. If you may have heard of this, but not with the term benefits cliff, but benefits cliff occurs when a small pay increase disqualifies an individual from public benefit programs, and it abruptly reduces their household resources. So for example, if someone gets a 50-cent pay raise or a $3 pay raise, and they are receiving childcare subsidies, which could equal about $1,200, this person could actually stop receiving those $1,200 because of a 50-cent or $3 pay increase. And instead of helping them, unfortunately, it actually creates a deficit because we know that $3 more per dollar per hour is not going to equal to $1,200 a month. And so that's one of the things that we are working on with our community members, individuals with lived experience who are actually have experienced this or are living it today and now. And so we are working to figure out ways to actually change these things, change the systems, the policies that are in place that continue to create these circumstances for individuals. And the second part that we primarily focus on is the livable wage. We understand the Asset Building Coalition champions the idea of a livable wage as a tool to achieve greater financial stability for more people in our community. We believe that any potential solutions must take a person's entire financial situation and family compensation into account, including public benefits they receive. And so hopefully by the end of this year, you will hear about us rolling out our livable wage certification program for Forsyth County, which we are very excited about and look forward to sharing more with you. So now that I've shared quite a bit about ABC, one of the things we're here to discuss is the impact that fines and fees have in our community. We know that the lowest economic mobility counties is one of them is Forsyth County, and ABC advocates for justice issues. Some of those are the benefits cliff, municipal fines and fees, student loan debt, state earned income tax credit, Medicaid expansion, and affordable housing. Today, we're here to take a deep dive into fines and fees, and we're going to be more about the background of these issues and hear from individuals that have participated in the local program here. We'll also hear from Laura Holland, who will share more about what's happening in our state and share some data on Forsyth County. We'll also hear from Charlie Gardner, ABC Forsyth board member and advocacy chair, and his main role is with the Winston-Salem Foundation as a program officer with their inclusive economy work. So now we are going to do one question to share with you, and I'm going to put it in the chat here. Is now that I've shared a little bit about this work, why are you here and how is this connected to your work? So why are you here and how is this connected to your work? And if you are able to, if you have the ability to, we would love for you to put your answers on the Jamboard. If you are not able to, we would love to hear your answer on the chat. So why are you here and how is this connected to your work? And maybe you don't know that, and that is perfectly fine. There was there was an example note on here that said, it may be that you're here to learn more about fines and fees, and you don't know how it's connected to your work. That could be an example. Just if you have never used Jamboard before, you can click on the sticky note as, oh, and you guys are not seeing this. Let's see. You can, there we go.
I have some sticky notes I'm having.
Okay, thank you.
Click on them and then type, or they can have their own.
So I see some of you have gone on there already. You can click on some of these and add what you would like to add. You can click on the sticky note and start typing. And again, the question is in the chat. Why are you here and how is this connected to your work? This being the fines and fees. So I see some people have begun typing. So I see some of the answers, because I believe that there's an opportunity for local advocacy efforts to change our systems and policies for the better. As an ABC board member, a service that can be made available to our patients that may be impacted by fines and fees. To learn about economic mobility in Forsyth County, connected to my work in community development, Love Out Loud representative. And we have some responses as well here. I see Daniela is the community service coordinator with the Hispanic League, so wanted to see and learn what great ideas and proposals from this meeting I could use for her community. Janet is a patient navigator and would like to get more knowledge on fines and fees to assist our patients. Interested in how this issue contributes to the racial wealth gap in Forsyth County. So thank you all for sharing all of these things. I am actually going to turn it over now to Laura Holland, who's again going to be sharing more about what's happening in our state. Laura Holland is the director of Fair Chance Criminal Justice Project at the North Carolina Justice Center. So Laura, thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Hello and good afternoon. I am just wondering really quickly, can you all see me? All right, great. Let me share my screen. Well, first I want to start off by thanking the Asset Building Coalition for inviting me here today to talk to you all about debt-based driver's license suspension. Again, my name is Laura Holland Webb, and I am the project director of the Fair Chance Criminal Justice Project at the North Carolina Justice Center, where we really take a deep look at some of the things criminal justice related that causes people to get in poverty and stay in poverty throughout our state. I personally have worked on driver's license suspension, debt-based driver's license suspension since about 2018, when I became the lead attorney from the Durham driver's license and restoration program. And I helped lead their effort to work with the local district attorney's office to do a mass debt relief program where we were able to eliminate debt owed on about 14,000 cases in Durham County that were leading to long-term driver's license suspension and assist about 11,000 people. Although I'm no longer with the DEAR project, I work with local advocates throughout the state. I work with the North Carolina Pro Bono Resource Center and the Blanchard Legal Clinic to do other debt-based driver's license suspension, mass debt relief programs throughout the state to help thousands of people with assistance of the local district attorney's offices. And through that effort, we've been able to expand our debt relief programs to about 15 counties in North Carolina. So I'm excited to be here today to talk to you all about debt-based driver's license suspension. So just to name the problem that we see is that at any given time, there are thousands of North Carolinians, disproportionately people of color, and low-income people across our state who face debt-based driver's license suspension and the consequences that stem from that, simply because they are unable to pay their traffic-related court costs. And so in our state, we are one of the 24 states in the nation that automatically, indefinitely suspend someone's driver's license for failure to pay. And just to, take a step back and define a few terms, when I say our suspension process is automatic, that means that once the court notifies the DMV that someone has failed to pay, that the DMV has no discretion, automatically suspend that person's driver's license. And when I say indefinite suspension, I mean that the suspension will stay in place until that individual is able to pay that debt or otherwise resolve it. So why is this a problem? Or why is this problem exist? So one of the things that we can point to for why this problem exists and why so many people in our state face debt-based driver's license suspension is that one thing that we know is that over the last 20 years, the court system has really relied on criminal court costs to help fund the systems. And therefore, over the last 20 years or so, court costs, fines, and fees have increased substantially. And I mean both the amounts of court costs and then the number of things that trigger criminal court costs. So for example, the base fee in 1995 for criminal court costs, the first line item on this list was only $41. And now we look at the cost now, starting in 2019, it is $147.50, which if you do the math, that is a 260% increase. And overall, we've seen the number of things that trigger court costs increase from 4 things to about 52 items. And so this is not even a full list of all the things that can trigger a fee that make up criminal court costs. And in total, over the last 20 years, we've seen the amounts of court costs balloon to about 400%. So at the same time, we see court costs increase. We know that there is a substantial amount of people who are living in poverty in our state. In our state, there is about 15% of all residents who are living in poverty. And studies show that about 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And there are 4 in 10 people who cannot afford an expense of $400 or more. And we have to note that this is probably worse based on the pandemic that people are now experiencing. So when we wrap all that together, what we see is very stark outcomes. So this is data that we received from the Administrative Office of the Court, and the data was from January 2022 and before. And it gave us a list of all the cases that are currently in suspension mode because of unpaid debt. And so what we see is there are cases that have been suspended and are still suspended, going all the way back to 1988. And from that data, what we see is that there are about 470,000 cases in our state that are leading to long-term driver's license suspension. And this represents about 300,000 people. And as you can see from the numbers, there's multiple people throughout our state who have more than one suspension, because when faced with the decision to stop driving and be shut out of opportunities or continue to drive without that license, we see about 70% of individuals who continue to drive at the cost of themselves and their families. And one thing that we have seen from the data that we have is that in our state, on average, folks can stay suspended for about 8.5 years, which in a state that is as rural as North Carolina is a long time to be without adequate mobility. Also from the data, we see that this debt-based driver's license suspension is an issue that cuts across racial lines and class lines. We know that statewide, about 45% of individuals who have debt-based driver's license suspension were identified as Black. And this is compared to the 2020 North Carolina census data that says only 22% of the population of North Carolina is identified as Black. And so we know that this is a racialized issue. And because we know that people living in poverty have the most difficulty paying the court costs that are getting higher and higher each year, that people living in poverty are the ones who are more likely to have the debt-based driver's license suspension. So we talked a little bit about the North Carolina numbers. As before I end, I just want to lift up what the numbers look like in Forsyth County. And again, this is based on data that we received in January 2022. Based on the data, we know that there are about 40,000 traffic-related tickets that are possibly causing driver's license suspension in this county, which represents about 23,000 people. So again, we see that there are about 8,000 people in this county who are facing more than one debt-based suspension on their record. Based on the data, we know that the majority of the people who have debt-based driver's license suspension were identified as Black, with the majority of those individuals being men. There is a 56% percentage of individuals with debt-based driver's license suspension who are Black, and that's when disproportionate to the population, where African Americans only represent about 28% of Forsyth County residents. We also know from the data that a majority of the people are ages 21 to 30 who are facing debt-based driver's license suspension, and that in this county, the average length of suspension is about 9 years. So that's about 9 years on average that people sit out of mobility or face driving illegally because they're not able to pay that debt. And the last thing I just want to end with before I close is just the real life impacts that debt-based driver's license suspension has on individuals. What you see on the slide is some stories and comments that we received over the years as we have represented individuals and helping them get their license back. And one thing is for sure that it has a major impact on individuals' ability to thrive. We experience individuals who have not been able to get employment or keep meaningful employment because they didn't have their license. It generally affects where someone can live because usually they have to live near bus lines in order to get around. And it just overall impacts a person's ability to care for their family. And in Winston-Salem, we know from a report that was released in 2019 from the University of Winston-Salem State that it has a major impact on people here as well, where the researcher presented that not having a driver's license can add an additional 8.6 hours to your weekly commute, which is a long time spent commuting. And it also can cause a family to not have the benefit of about $4,300 a year in income. So it can possibly have an impact on your income. So that's all I have to share today. I am open for questions, and thank you again for inviting me to be here.
So if anyone has any questions for Laura, either feel free to write them in the chat, or you can also raise your hand. Thank you, Laura, for the information you've shared with us today. Okay, So I do not see any questions coming up, but if you do have some, please write them in the chat. So as we continue, now I'd like to bring up the same Jamboard that we used earlier and see how, after now learning about the work, see how it has a connection to your work. So bringing it up here. And we're actually, if you click over to the second one, do you see any new connections to the effects of fines and fees and your work? So now that you have heard from Laura, do you see any new connections to the effects of fines and fees and your work? And if so, if you could either type that in the chat or feel free to grab a sticky note and put it on the Jamboard. Here's the question for everyone. And there was a question, what does FTC, what is that an abbreviation for? It means failure to comply, which basically means unpaid tickets. So I see some people writing, it affects the population of people that I work with, okay? That's a good question. So there's a question, do you see people end up incarcerated due to unpaid fines and fees and continuing to drive on suspended licenses? Laura, don't know if you're able to answer that.
Yes, I can answer. I was typing in the chat, but I can answer.
Okay.
And the short answer is yes, we do see people incarcerated due to unpaid fines and fees. And one thing to just emphasize is that having a suspended driver's license, especially if you keep driving, can be a reason to keep someone in the system and give them more risk of being exposed to law enforcement. And so it can ultimately keep them in the system longer than they should. So short answer is yes, I've seen people get incarcerated due to unpaid fines and fees.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So now, thank you all for sharing. I see some of you have typed in if you have seen any new connections to the effects of fines and fees. And we appreciate your participation there. I also see a question that has come up, so we will go ahead and Laura, if you are able to answer that question in the chat, we'd appreciate it. But we'll go ahead and keep moving. And now we're going to have a poll that is going to ask whether you have heard about the Forsyth County Drive program. And as you see, some of the answers that may have come up are no, yes, but don't know enough about it and not sure. So I see some of you have already begun participating. We want to know whether you have heard about the Forsyth County Drive program. Okay. Yeah, I see some of you don't see the poll, and I'm wondering if that may be, if you open the link on the web browser via Evernote, I do not think it shows up because we're experiencing that here as well. So I apologize for that.
You can put your response in the chat too.
Yes, if you aren't able to see the question on there, So have you heard about the DRIVE program? And answers are no, yes, yes, but not, don't know enough about it, or not sure. Okay. Thank you all for participating on that. We'll go ahead and end the poll, and here are some of the results. Not sure if everyone can see them, but about 67% answered no, and 33% answered yes. And no one answered not sure or yes, don't know enough about it. Those percentages do not include the ones that came in the chat. So thank you for your answers. I see some of you refer residents to the program. So now I'm gonna turn it over to Charlie, who is going to tell us more about the DRIVE program. So wait, hold on.
Great. Okay, I believe everyone should be able to hear me. So yeah, thank you all for coming here. As you may know, so the DRIVE program, how we start there. DRIVE stands for Driver Restoration Initiative and Vocational Expansion. It was a program that started and was, well, the roots of the program started in about 2015 when the District Attorney Jim O'Neill had a few different clinics that were time limited that would allow people to fill out an application and get some of these fines and fees expunged. So under the NC General Assembly, there was a couple of different ways people can get their old debt, court debt removed. And one of them, as Laura shared, is more proactive, like in Durham and Mecklenburg County and 15 other counties. We've seen that where the DA kind of looks through the data and see who's eligible and then proactively expunges it. Other one though is more of a clinic. And here in Forsyth County, the DRIVE program is a clinic where a person needs to fill out an application, demonstrate that they were not able to pay, and submit it. And so it out of the first, they had like 3 or 4 clinics kind of prior to 2020, but then 2020 the city council funded to make this a permanent to make this a year-round permanent program, and had funding to hire 2 staff for that, 1 clerk and 1 district attorney. And so even though it was funded in 2020, it was in February, and so COVID-19 delayed its launch until 2021. Next slide. I kind of hinted to before earlier, in order to be eligible for this program, you need to be a resident of Forsyth County and have the ticket be from Forsyth County. So if you have a ticket in Guilford, it wouldn't help you. The ticket must be at least 7 years old and cannot be the result of DWIs or reckless driving. You can't have any felonies or be a sex offender. And again, you have to show documentation that non-payment wasn't like malicious or that was really due to financial hardship. And so they, so these are the different criteria for it. And, 7 years is a bit of a long time, in my opinion, to have a driver license suspended. I think if you have a DUI, the license is only automatically suspended for a year before you can get it reinstated. But here, if you have traffic debt, it's indefinite. And so it just seemed like the proportion of the punishment is, or the punishment is out of proportion with the issue. And so 7 years is a bit much. I think Laura may have better data, but I think after 2 years, only 30% of people actually pay it and come back into compliance. And so you're more likely it's unlikely that you'll pay the debt after 2 years. And I think the average length is 9 years of having suspended. And so really, it's a punishment for something that would kind of, that's out of bounds. Okay. So since the launch of the program in 2021, they received almost 1,200 applicants, and they've assisted 200 of them. They waived about $100,000 of fines and helped 78 residents restore those driving privileges. So so there's kind of a couple of different steps to getting your license restored. The first is you need to have the court waive or remove your court costs. The second part is actually to go to the DMV and apply for your license to be restored. Actually, beyond even the fees that Laura showed earlier, I think to get your license restored at the DMV, it's another $120. And so there's just another cost added onto that. It's a different process. It's hard to navigate. And that's why only out of 203 people, residents assisted, 78 were actually able to get the driving privileges. And you can also see that there's 435 inquiries per month about the program kind of outreach. And so I think Laura shared that there was 41,000 cases of tickets for failure to pay, about 23,000 residents. That actually only covers about half of the number of these. That's failure to pay. There's also failure to appear. If you don't go to court to begin with, like if you have a court appointment and can't make it, and you can also have your license suspended. And so it's another way to have a license suspended. And so really, the numbers of people impacted in Forsyth County are huge. And that's why you can also see with the 1,200 applicants, it's just really a fraction of the total number. Probably because the eligibility requirements are also kind of stringent. Next slide. And so one of the challenges that we've identified as a challenge for driving that, the city council and the DAs also recommended is staff capacity. And they showed the program is administered by an assistant district attorney, or an attorney, and then a clerk of court. And right now, the ADA position is actually vacant. There have been 2 people in that position. Each of them lasted only about 3 months. And the reason that was given by the DA's office is that this isn't a prosecutor position, but really more administrative. And so people, I guess, aren't as attracted to this. And so the city council is seeking to transform the ADA position into a director position that would not require the attorney, but hopefully that can relieve some of the stress of the wait line. As you saw, there was still 900 people on the waiting list for this. And so right now they have even fewer staff. And as we'll hear that the wait time to be helped has grown from a couple months to over a year now because they're just so backed up. And so that's a challenge. So I just want to take this moment to now introduce a couple of our neighbors who have participated in the program. We have Quentin and Radina, and I think Vivian will begin with some questions.
Yeah. And we're actually going to do this so that we can see them better. And we are grateful to have both Radina and Quentin here with us. Here we go. All right. Give me 1 second here since I moved things over. All right.
There we go.
Okay. So thank you both again for being here. And so as participants of the program, we want to kind of hear, both of you can answer this whichever way. So before the drive program, did you have any hope of getting your license reinstated?
I'll let you go first. I had little hope. my license had been suspended, I think, since 2008. So I was riding around no license for that long. Fines and fees were a problem. So that's the reason why I was letting it linger. When I came across the drive program, that was the opportunity. I felt like, you know what I'm saying. So yes, there was a little bit of hope. I don't, but not much. I was constantly getting pulled over. You know, driving without a license, just like Laura mentioned, building up fines, building up, and I was hoping that I wouldn't go to jail getting caught driving all these times. So that's what really made me stop driving. But as far as hope, I don't see many because I had a lot of fines stacked up, a lot of debt.
Thank you for sharing that. We'll go to the next question, and maybe Radina, you can answer this one. Was applying to the DRIVE program a difficult process?
It was not. It was not a difficult process whatsoever. I was really impressed with how easily it was to apply, and that was really encouraging. But the wait time has been ridiculous. And because of that, I myself have lost hope in being able to resolve my issues with, my license being suspended. Once I realized it was going to take some time for the DRIVE program to kind of reach back to me after inquiring many times myself, I kind of just tried to tackle the issues on my own. And I have now over $2,000 in court fees, which to me is kind of impossible to take care of and live as well.
You talked about how you've kind of lost hope, and that takes me into the next question as to when did you apply for this program? And you said you've lost hope, so you're still waiting to hear back.
I'm still waiting to hear back. Actually, the only person I've ever talked to was you, Vivian, and I don't believe you're running the program yourself. I applied late January of this year.
Okay. What about you, Quentin?
My situation was a little different. I think I was just lucky, or maybe it was the grace of God, but I applied in the first week of August of 2021, first week of August of 21. And I had my license by the first week of January of 21. But it could have been maybe a little sooner. I had problems when I went into the DMV. I didn't know I had to go with insurance. Then because of COVID, you had to schedule certain things. So really maybe 5 to 6 months is the whole process was knocked out for me.
So you both had a completely different outcome and experience. Now, Quentin, you shared how you faced some challenges in getting your license reinstated. Were there any other problems when you got it? And also, was the cost something that was high or something that was reasonable in your perspective?
Honestly, in my perspective, I thought anything was reasonable just for the fact I had been driving illegal for so long. I was just so happy to be able to get my license. I was willing to pay anything, even if I didn't have it, I was willing to try to find it, borrow from someone, anything. But I don't think the cost was too high. When I say too high, I don't know everyone's situations. But I mean, just for me to go into the DMV, have to pay the $120 and whatever I owed, like I said, to me, it didn't seem like a lot. Also, I'm working, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of people may not be working, so I don't know everyone's situation, but to me, I didn't feel like it was that much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I chime in on that real quickly? Just from my experience, I am a working person. I've always been a full-time employee. I do feel like the court costs are extremely high. Even with the DMV over the years, I've seen them double and triple. And cost of living doesn't change, wages don't change. And I've done my research, and it's really sad to know that some people are moving forward off of other people's failures. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these fines that we are paying are putting money somewhere else, or, you know, they're using it to fund this and fund that, but it's off of our, it's off of our backs. We're struggling to pay these fines, and we're struggling not to be in trouble and been pulled over and prosecuted and possibly jailed. And these fines and these costs keep rising. So I do think that they are ridiculously
I do think
high.
the court fines and costs, I do think they are too high.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We saw some of the numbers, right, that Laura shared with us earlier, and to hear you, obviously share that as well. So over 41,000 individuals in Forsyth County have had their license suspended due to unpaid fines and fees. And how did you hear about the DRIVE program?
I honestly can't remember how I originally heard about it, but one day I was laying in bed, I was surfing my phone on my news app, and I seen the article saying that the DRIVE program was accepting applications. I went, put the application in right then and there. I shot an email, you responded, and me and you went back and forth, and it went from there.
What about you, Regina?
Quentin is actually my older brother. So, he knows, we're in the same position. And once he heard about the program, he passed the information along to me, and I did my research as well.
Do you think more marketing needs to be done for more community members to hear about this program?
Definitely.
Because you heard through word of mouth, Regina, and Quentin, you found an article that showed up on your phone.
Yes, but I seen it at one time, and that's it. I told my sister about it. I've never seen the article, I've never seen a commercial, never heard it on the radio, anything. I definitely
Social media.
there need more marketing.
Social media, yeah. And one thing to note for everyone, so as mentioned before, ABC is actually not, we are not directly working with the DRIVE program. We were actually advocating for it along with other community members, but somehow our number was the one that came up, our email address. So that's why I have had communication with both of you to be able to help kind of be a liaison in connecting you to the DA's office. So just wanted to share that with everyone that's watching. So if this program was to come to an end, which it can happen depending on who is elected, how do you think it will affect you and our community?
Well, me personally, it's going to affect me in a major way. I'll just really have to figure out a way to budget and fit these costs and fines into my life to where I can pay them. I will not be able to pay them at once. So I'll just be asking for grace and mercy, pretty much. As a community, I feel like there's little emphasis put on how it affects the Black community and the colored community, or the less fortunate community. It's just going to be more of a struggle, to put it in simple terms. I see a lot more people having a criminal record, longer, bigger than they already have. A lot more people being jailed for driving without license. A lot more people struggling to get to those bus lines. It's just a snowball effect. And for myself, I'm sitting here thinking I'll have to budget in the fines and tickets, but I still have to budget in Uber and pay my brother to pick me up, or pay my so it's a snowball effect. It really is.
Yeah. Quentin, so your situation is different because you were able to get your license reinstated. How do you think it will affect the community?
Well, I agree with my sister. I think people not being able to obtain their driver's license and, you know, puts people in a position to break the law. You know, like there's kids that have to go to school, people have to get from A to B, and if there's no way to get the license or they don't have a way of public transportation, they're gonna hop in a car and drive. That's the same thing I was doing. You know, I had kids that had to be picked up and go to school every day. I had a girlfriend who had to be picked up and dropped off from work every day. So that didn't stop me from getting in the car to do what I had to do. You know, I didn't want to do that. And in the process of doing some of those things, I was pulled over, you know, tickets, fines, taken to jail, all of those things. So I think that it would be bad for the community. I think this program would help a lot, a very lot. Like, it helped me so much. I went from making a job, I was working a job making $10 an hour. As soon as I got my license, I started applying for other jobs where I could, you know, maybe do a delivery and stuff. Now I'm making $15 an hour. Not saying it's so much, but it was a difference, you know. So I think it helped. This program would help a lot.
Yeah. And you both talked about, Radina, you talked about that snowball effect. What has it meant for you to not have a license and have to depend on your brother, on everyone else that you've mentioned that has been kind of like your support system in this situation? What has this meant for you?
Well, it's disheartening. You know, it kind of takes away some of your independence as an adult, and being able to move and do things like you normally do. But for me personally, it's made me appreciate the people that I have in my life. But it has been extremely hard to have to work with other people and their schedules. I have a daughter, you know, she does extracurricular activities that we've had to cease from doing because it was a lot of traveling with what she was doing. So it's been discouraging. It has been. And then to try to take matters into my own hands and realizing how many fines and fees I actually have was extremely discouraging. And that's been in the last maybe 3 or 4 months that I've kind of just said, well, it might not happen for me.
Yeah.
Not anytime soon.
So we do have one question that came in, and I don't know if you're able to answer this. So you mentioned that you wanted to kind of, you know, maybe budget and see if you can start paying off some of those fines and fees. Do these fines continue to grow as you are paying them over time?
They do.
They do.
They do.
Okay.
You do occur late fees, yes.
So, you know, I think the last thing is we just kind of want to hear from one of you or both of you is, what would you say to the candidates or the people that are thinking of getting rid of this program or not continuing the program?
I would like to know what their goals for their community is. What do they really want for the people of Forsyth County? You know, this is a growing community. We can look right out the window and see how things are changing downtown. If they still want people to grow and the community to grow, I think they should pour into helping people do better. And one of those is by helping people with their license restoration and getting rid of the fees. Just to give people freedom to, like my brother said, work the jobs that they really feel like they deserve, and make the money they feel like they deserve. Unfortunately for me, it hasn't affected me in that way, but it could. You know, if something happens to him or my mom, I have to take a different route. So I would really like to know what these candidates want for their community and what's their plan? How, if it's not this program, then what else is in place to help?
I couldn't have said it better.
Well, we really appreciate you both sharing your perspectives, your stories with us, because this is a reality of what's happening in Forsyth County, and we're truly grateful for you to have come here and spent your time with us, and those that are watching, to share more about how it's affecting you and our community as a whole in Forsyth County. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So if we're actually gonna move into a different, our next piece, and I'm gonna turn it over to Charlie.
Yeah, well, thank you both again, Christina, for sharing your stories. It's always, I think it's so important to hear from people who experience it. Feel like you guys are experts in this way more than any of us are. Yeah, you have intricate knowledge of the court system that I do not have, and I'm just really grateful for your time today. So, do you want to share my slide? So, one of the reasons that we're gathered here right now, coming together, is there is an opportunity for advocacy. It's with this election, the current election with a district attorney in Forsyth County this fall, and early voting starts October 20th. And so our hope is to engage both candidates in some way before early voting begins. And, you know, as Vivian shared, I think the danger isn't necessarily that this funding will be like officially terminated, but that it won't be prioritized and it won't be funded in the future. And so, like, we've already seen how staffing issues have plagued it. You know, like, there's another DA who is trying to step in part-time, but it's not a priority. So you can just see how this program could just be put onto the side burner and eventually fizzle out. And so we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And we want to get the candidates to commit to continue the program and hopefully expand it. So minimum continue it and hopefully expand it. And the city council has funded this position to the end of this year. We hope to take this commitment by the candidates to the city council and have them allocate funding for future years. So we'll have funding in support for the future. And really, we have two kind of levels that we're thinking about. Ideal would be to move the DRIVE program to address the issue at a systemic level rather than just an individual level. So we hear about how right now in the DRIVE program, a person has to apply. They have to demonstrate that there've been some financial hardship why they couldn't pay. There's all these other restrictions attached to it. It doesn't have to be this way. There is a pathway that other counties have done where they know who has suspended licenses. They know who isn't dangerous driving. They know how long they've been. The DA can look at the data and present a list of names to a judge to waive the fines without the level of the individual. And it's a more wide square. And it really is looking at this at a systematic rather than an individual level. However, based upon some conversations that we've had with the district attorney's office, there may not be. They aren't supportive of this idea. They think that this process is better. So if that's the case, if they want to stay with this more clinical model, then we want to make sure that we can make sure to continue it and also improve it. And we have three main asks. The first is to expand the capacity. So adding additional staff, and also really by incorporating proactive wide-scale removal of fines, it actually is less work for the staff to administer it. So again, we're not giving up on it, and we want to make sure we present this to them, but at least add more staff. Also to make the program more accessible by reducing the wait time, by expanding capacity, improving eligibility criteria. So to demonstrate that, you know, you don't have 7 years is way too long. You know, 2 years is reasonable. But that's still like twice as long as a DUI first time. And so, and then also, even like if you don't pay something after 2 years, it's pretty evident that you have financial hardship. And it's not going to be, if people have money, they would pay this. So even the proving that you have some hardship by saying you were on some benefit of this side or that, like that just seems an actual hoop to make people jump through that is unnecessary. And again, increasing outreach. So this is making it more accessible. And then Quentin shared a little bit about how it wasn't always clear what you need to do after you get your fines and fees remitted. So providing support to residents who go through the program, who now, how do you do the next step? And and while the restoration fine isn't in the DA's office, that's something in the NC General Assembly. We want to, that may be something we can look at in the future too, to maybe find a way to have reduction fines, but at least making sure that people know what they need in order to restore. So we are kind of short on time. I don't think we put this until 2:15. So, okay. Well, I was gonna say, rather than bringing a small group, we just do the gym board as a large group together.
Okay.
And that way So, everyone go back. We're not gonna break up into small groups right now. We're just gonna stay in a larger group. And there is, about a dozen of us here, so I think that's a good number. And we'll look at the 2 jam boards.
I'd say it probably won't take that long
Okay.
because they're smaller groups. If you wanted to.
I think let's do the
Alright.
larger group, especially if people aren't, I don't know, we're having issues with
Oh, true.
too, so breaking out might not be the most.
Okay, there we go. So there's the questions.
Yeah, so here are the questions. They are on the Jamboard. If everyone who is on the Jamboard can go to slides
We can just use slides 3
3
and
and
4.
4. Yeah, 3 and 4.
And give me 1 second while I share it.
Yeah.
I'll share the link.
So, when we're thinking about how to engage, so we want to have this opportunity to engage y'all to identify best ways that we can engage the DA candidates before early voting starts on October 20th. And we have examples of how this can be done. So, they could be letter to the editors, they could be candidates form, it could be a sign-on letter, meeting with the candidates on an individual basis. There's a few different models, and we haven't designed it all yet, and so we want to hopefully get everyone's input on what might be a good way to move forward. And so if you have can put on a sticky pad, what the ways that what would be successful? Like if we were thinking about engaging candidates, what would that look like? And what challenges might we face? So so if people want, or just give a few minutes to respond to that. And if anyone has any questions, you can share. Also in the chat, you can also, I think people can unmute themselves too right now. If you want to just share verbally, we can take notes too.
I'm posting the question in the chat if you would like to answer it, and you guys also feel free to participate.
Get candidates positioned on the record, video writings, and making sure that they're on records to support it.
Mhm.
I'm gonna copy some of the ones that have been shared. Ways to improve systems, provide more information for individuals to help themselves through the process, like dedicated court dates, 415 forms in the clerk's office, workshops. Charlie, did you want to share what would it take for us to influence the DA candidates to continue supporting the DRIVE program?
Yeah.
Some suggestions?
Yeah, and so as I said, a couple ideas that we have would be a candidates forum. Right now, there's 2 candidates, Jim O'Neill, who is the incumbent, and Judge Hartsfield, who is a retired judge, who is his challenger. And so we have these two DA candidates. I think we can get access to both of them. We have City Council member James Taylor, who has been very supportive and said he can even help facilitate a conversation with the DA if we're facing any challenges, or we can go through this out. So there's different ways that we can approach them. It could be also, I know time is short, capacity is sometimes a bit limited. So we can also do a letter to the editor, or that we also send to the DAs and get them to respond to. There's different questions for that too. And so we could do a phone call campaign even. We have some groups who are interested who have part of like neighborhood organizing circles. So we could do something along those lines too. Like the different ways that we can do advocacy. And so I guess the question is, do you think that would be what do you think is what one of these maybe requires the least amount of effort and the most amount of opportunity for input? So the candidate form may be effective, but maybe we couldn't get them. Maybe we could do them. I don't know. So that's just some thoughts.
And some people have written in a letter writing campaign to the DA's office from people who have received relief and people who are waiting for relief.
Mm-hmm.
There was a comment to, this feels like low-hanging fruit that the candidates, can promote as a quick win.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Do we have an idea of a minimum amount of funding that would be necessary to move the program forward in a sufficient way?
Yeah, that's a good question. The funding, I think, would probably require hiring additional staff. I'm not quite sure what the clerk is, but that is something that we would take to the city council member, and that we might, the Winston-Salem Foundation is an advocate for this too, and we may be able to help support the program through a grant as well. But I think before that happens, we would need the commitment for the city council member and to do some match funds and things like that. And so there are some opportunities to bring some private funds to this as well to match some public funds. And there's could be some other donors or funders out there too that we maybe can leverage for this program. But again, return of investment, I think the city council has allocated like $250,000 or $275,000 for this program, and they waived $100,000. So it's almost like the return of investment, like, well, should we have just paid money for the fines and fees? It's like one of the most effective way to do this.
Would be great to move it out of the DA's office to a community-based agency that could work closely with the DA's office. They would be better at assisting community members and navigating the process.
Yeah.
The process gets more complicated for our neighbors who don't speak English and or are not from the US.
Yeah. That's an interesting idea too, because you could just have a trusted partner make again, the move away from an ADA role to a director role shows that you don't need the attorney to fill this. You just need a district attorney to recommend the names.
Right.
So you could do something that would also provide an avenue for the third pathway to getting licenses. They can provide additional support to that, because right now the DA doesn't see it as their job, because it's the DMV and not their role. And so they kind of pass the buck at that point. That's actually an interesting idea. So the next question is, if you go to the next slide, there are other issues beyond the drive program that we would like to advocate for the DA. Or are there other issues? So if you as an organization or a person has a wide variety of things, if we're engaging the DA, what other things should we be aware of and should we potentially add with this advocacy? So if people can put that on there. And we do just have 2 minutes left. So as people put that down there, I think we want to one of our goals right now is to create a coalition in anticipation of the 2020, the October 20th early voting starting to get people to engage the candidate. So it's kind of a time limited engagement right now. And we were wondering if who would be interested in kind of continuing to kind of take some of this feedback into the next steps of identifying best ways to engage the candidate. So this would be, the time we would probably be meeting for our next meeting, like before the end of August, we would schedule the next meeting to kind of outline some of these course of actions. And so this, today was just an opportunity to update everyone on the work and to hopefully get some input and some support. So if people would be able to put in the chat or raise your hand on the screen, if you are interested and willing to continue in this advocacy push. Again, it's just going to be for a couple months before the October 20th early voting deadline.
So again, if you're interested in participating yourself on kind of the next steps on being a part of the push, the campaign, whatever it is that we're going to be moving forward with, we ask that you raise your hand, whether you're on camera or not, or even just share in the chat. So I can go ahead and jot names down. And as Charlie shared, we are looking to meet the week of August 29th. So I see we have some names. Thank you for putting it in the chat. I see Brooklyn, you can go ahead and lower your hand. I saw it raised. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And I see also some of you that you may have to participate in the capacity of a citizen, right? So that meaning that you are not representing the organization that you work for, but you are representing there as yourselves. You are there as yourselves, community members. All right. Okay.
Okay. Well, I think, thank you all for joining us and thank you for your time. Please be in touch. If you have any questions, you can email Vivian this, or you can email me at cdarger@wsfoundation.org. I'll put that in the chat real quick. And hopefully we will be, for those who volunteer to stay connected, we will be reaching out with you about a doodle poll to schedule something before the week of the 29th, you said, right? Yeah. Before the end of the month or the first part of that week.
We'll be sharing a doodle poll. All right. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time, and thank you to our guest speakers who are here with us. Really, thank you both, Regina and Quentin, for your time. Thank you all.